Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. So today on the podcast, I'm going to talk you through my recent visit to Intersec in Dubai. Now, it's not really like a review sort of debrief episode. It's definitely not a sales pitch for any shiny kit, but I want to walk you through things I saw, what caught my attention. Maybe you've never been, maybe you've never heard of this before. And the fire and rescue service and the first responder sector is massive. Way, way bigger than probably most people think. Because we just never get out of our silos. We never get out of our bubbles. So I'm going to talk you through a few of the things I saw, what these things made me think when it comes to the future of first responders, and certainly the future of the fire service. A lot of it's obviously going to be driven around the fire service and this global response to the changing world. Now, for the Firefighters podcast, and for me, selfishly, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Being at Intersec was really about wanting to keep my finger on the pulse. I've wanted to go for many, many years. This is one of probably 4 or 5 places where you can really see the pulse of global innovation, rather than really just relying on second or third hand interpretation or filtered takeaways once everything's landed back home and people have forgotten stuff. That's why I took a load of notes out there. We've got an article coming out. MDM Publishing is going to be in a bunch of their magazines. Probably try and put some links in below here if they're out in time. Don't know if they will be, but certainly on all the channels we'll be promoting them when they do. Over the years, I've attended a lot of trade shows, mostly across the UK though. And I've been involved with stuff behind the scenes with Blue Light Show since that innovation. And again, that's going to be rolling out again this year. Check underneath the links if you want to see the sort of stuff that you see at Intersec on the UK soil. Blue Light Show is a great place to go. And that being involved behind the scenes has really given me a real value of being physically present in these spaces. You see what gets prioritized. You see where investment is going. You start to notice where the industry is quietly heading. Long before it reaches the mainstream conversation, certainly in the fire service, you'll see stuff at these shows that will be rolling out in a couple of years, sometimes 5 years, 10 years, depends where you are around the world, really. Intersec takes that idea and scales it up massively. Obviously, it's not a UK-focused event. It's genuinely global. So by stepping out onto that show floor and speaking directly with manufacturers, policymakers, operational leaders, practitioners from all over the world, my aim was pretty simple. I wanted to understand what's coming next, how is it already being applied internationally, and what that might mean for firefighters and first responders on the ground. Not in theory, but actually in practice. So Intersec Dubai, it's not strictly just a trade show. It's where security, safety, fire protection all collide. There's policy, technology, there's loads of conversations happening in back rooms with really, really high-flying people. Governments, first responders, trade and business, ministers, innovators, all in the same place, shaping how risk is being managed and really wrestled with in quite an increasingly complex world. There's no coincidence that it happens in a city pretty much built on ambition. This is my first time in Dubai, and the scale and intent of this place is like a sensory overload, to be honest. Dubai doesn't just do things quietly, and neither does Intersec, to be fair. Everything about it forces you to zoom out, to think bigger, and sometimes feel maybe even a little bit uncomfortable about how fast the landscape around us is changing. One of my things for this year, 2026, is I've got it written on the wall in front of me as I record this, because it's written in front of me because I want to think about it every time I get up in the morning, is how would this look if I wasn't thinking so small? And I think about that with everything that I'm trying to think about now, is like, why do we wait to get invited to things? Why do we wait for the chief of so-and-so or the head of whatever to bestow us with their grand introduction or invitation? Just do it. Just do it. Why are we thinking so small with some of the things that we're doing? And that's not a condescension. That's not me saying that you or anybody is doing things in a poor way or that they're small-minded. That's not what you want you to take away from that. It's that, why not? Why not me? Why not you? Why not any of us? It's time to be less impressed and more involved, not just from a personal, professional, service, region, nation, Why are we not involved? Let's get involved. So this episode is a reflection on that kind of journey. Sorry about that little segue. Not just what I saw on the show floor, but what I learned stepping outside the familiar and looking out at our profession through a wider international lens. So what's going to follow is obviously an attempt at the near impossible, because we just saw so much stuff. I tried to take notes, and then you'd have done an hour and a half, seen another 10 things, and you'll be like, oh my God, I didn't take any notes. So trying to just capture some of the things, some of the different elements that I think you might find interesting. I'm literally going to mention 5 or 6, some food for thought for yourselves. And then just to give you hopefully an appetite and an interest to get yourself out there. You haven't got to wait to be invited to these things. You can go to these things, whether it's the Blue Light Show on home soil in the UK, or whether it's something else internationally. You can go and do this. You can nominate yourself. You can sign up. You can, put skin in the game, go and do it. So I'm going to try and capture the scale of the event, the trip itself. Some of it is just personal stuff. Some of it's professional stuff. Just going to throw it all in there. That's what the podcast is all about. And some of the innovations and ideas that I think kind of stood out for me and that I remember to note down. Obviously, this recording will never fully recreate what it feels like to be there in person, boots on the ground. But if this episode does a little bit of its job, it should at least give you a sense of what caught my attention, what stayed with me long after I walked away from certain stands, and what I brought back in terms of insight, perspectives, and I think some genuinely important questions worth sitting with as global first responders. So firstly, I don't want to make any assumptions. Where were we actually going? Intersec Dubai 2026. It was the 12th until the 14th of January this year. It's at the Dubai World Trade Center, and it was the 27th edition of what they proclaim to be, and I'd probably agree to be fair, one of the leading global trade fair for safety, security, and fire protection. And it was around sort of 8-9 hour days, sort of 10 till 6-ish. Loads of areas covered. And we're going to give a link underneath because they're obviously already advertised in 2027. But let's start with, where did our journey start? So our journey obviously started back in the UK. When I say we, it was myself, Olivia, that works with the podcast, doing all of our strategic partnerships and all of her wizardry to keep things going behind the scenes whilst I keep punching forward with stuff. And then we were joined by her partner, Barnaby, who's one of the leads for the 9/11 stair climb and a firefighter here in the UK. So we flew out just after 10 o'clock, Saturday the 10th. We went overnight from Heathrow to Dubai. It's a strange between space of night flying. It's always kind of an odd one. Time just kind of stops behaving properly, don't you? Enter this weird dimension. Body's tired, brain's wired. I watched a couple of films on the way out there, and everything just feels slightly suspended in time. But that liminal gap between departure and arrival felt like a really fitting prelude to what was coming. We were leaving, obviously, the very familiar ground of the UK, stepping into something way bigger. I've wanted to go here for a long time. By the time we landed, we were, to be fair, a bit sleep deprived, but really alert, the whole tired and wired thing, running on, coffee and anticipation and free stuff. Flight was great. Heat, it was warm out there. Not massively warm though, maybe 19 degrees. Jumped into an Uber, started the drive into the city. We're staying at a place called Almina. We're watching Dubai just sort of slide past the windows, half awake. Glass towers stretched upwards, wide roads, really, really clean, really, really deliberate landscape construction. It's just really, really beautiful. It wasn't chaotic. It was purposeful. The city was really, really very, very stunning to see as we were rolling into it. Even on the short drive, there was a clear sense of scale and intent that quietly set the tone probably for the days ahead that we were going to experience. The place sort of builds itself with confidence. It was nothing apologetic about it. It was just very, very bold and beautiful. Dubai is fantastic. I'd never been before, and it was very, very beautiful. Everything feels designed to move people, resources, and ideas efficiently forwards. Almina, where we were staying, is a very different version of Dubai. It's not like the polished postcard image that most people probably see. It's actually the working port area of the city, container yards, industrial edges, warehouses, constant low homo logistics. that kind of going on around there, doing exactly what they're designed to do. Ships come in, vehicles move out. That was kind of where we were staying. It was a really nice area. And you sit beneath, seeing that skyline, the spectacle, the ambition, the city that runs ahead of you. And it really gave us a lens of Dubai that was quite beautiful, because on that same drive, something really, really massive rose out of the city like a deliberate punctuation mark. There's a huge rectangular structure that stands alone, almost inviting you to ask about it because it looks a bit weird. So I asked the driver, I was like, what's the big sort of rectangle thing? And he was like, oh, that's the Dubai frame. It struck me immediately that it was not architecture built purely as a spectacle, even though it's obviously very visually striking. It literally separates old Dubai from new Dubai. That's what the Dubai frame does. On one side, significantly lower buildings, obviously tighter streets in the old Dubai, slower rhythm, lots of history and stuff like that. On the other side, glass, steel, ambition, speed. It was very symbolic of the two sides of the city, if you know what I mean. Doesn't erase its past, and it puts it in place alongside its future, if you will, and forces you to acknowledge both sides of it, which I thought was really, really cool. Quick one, we're working in collaboration with the Blue Light Show, a national conference and exhibition built around one thing. Blue Light services do better together than apart. For learning, sharing, improving how we operate, it brings together fire, police, ambulance, and rescue all in the same place for actual proper conversations about leadership, operations, capability, and the challenges we are facing on the front line. It's about seeing what's possible, pressure testing ideas, and taking practical learning back into your organization. I'm going to be there 1st and 2nd of July 2026 at the event, getting involved with those conversations and connecting with people who really care about doing the job better across the blue light sector. Do not sleep on this. If you value collaboration over silos and you want to make insight into what's actually useful, Blue Light Show is the one to get in your diary. Visit www.bluelight.show. Book your spot. You will walk away with so many insights, fresh connections, and practical takeaways you can actually use day one back in the job. I'll see you there. We spent a few hours back at the hotel decompressing, food, brain check, swim on the rooftop. Day one was decompressed because that was the Sunday, and we were ready to move into the new year, or move into the new week, sorry. It's brain fog. I'm recording it. That's like 11 o'clock on a night, by the way. So where we were staying, it was only a short walk from the docks and marina. But you just lift your eyes up slightly and you could see tomorrow's sort of destination. The vast outline of Intersec was quietly over the horizon. Just from the rooftop, you could see the Dubai World Trade Center was clearly visible. And what felt almost ironic was that Dubai frame sat directly on the route between us and the venue, which was like less than 10 minutes away. So a physical embodiment of old and new standing between where we slept and where we were heading on the next day. So each morning we'd pass through that symbolic gateway, obviously without any crazy ceremony, but it was strange moving from reflection into like, right, we're going to go and get stuff done here. Quite a reminder that progress doesn't replace history. It passes through it. I wrote that. Thought it was quite a nice story. Might find it interesting. So day one at the event. So as soon as we came in, get all your passes and everything like that, punching straight into the World Trade Center, really incredible building, massive. As soon as you came into the trade floor, scale just hits you. Noise, movement, languages overlapping, ideas colliding. Obviously, everyone's wearing slightly different clothes, which is interesting to see the different cultures, communities. You're instantly reminded, this ain't a regional event, this is global. And as soon as we stepped into the first room, we almost immediately landed on hikes. Obviously, a big partner of the podcast, working over years, they were showcasing their Fire Eagle range. I've been intimately connected to this for quite some time. And it really felt grounding, seeing those boots on the stand, having worn variations of them myself for years, and knowing they are already in the UK being used, got a strong foothold, if you excuse the pun, with obviously the UK big firefighters, the challenge circuits, and for any service that wants to see the best and have it on the feet of their operators. Lightweight, fatigue, movement, all of these things are factored for. They're not just marketing slogans, they're lived realities. So that was my first takeaway, seeing them grounded, especially if you train hard, work long shifts, or you pushing your body repeatedly under load. The Fire Eagle design understands that. It's great. That's what they've made it for. Standing there, sort of handling them talking through the thinking behind them again, it just reinforced why they're getting so much traction across the whole world. They feel less like traditional structural firefighting boots and more like an extension of the firefighter wearing them. Agile, breathable, built for long, hard days rather than just perfect photos in the catalogue. But then when you put something on, it's a bit meh, not big, horrible welly boots that most of us have been used to wearing. That kind of innovation is what has quietly earned them trust. So then we started moving across the floor. One piece of equipment that I think would be an interesting thing to segue into, because it genuinely stopped me in my tracks, was something called a firefighting turbine from Minimax. It was not subtle, but like me. It's an incredibly powerful, large mounted fan designed to do serious storms at serious scales, really. So it propels, well, it does a lot of things, but one of the main things that I was talking about with the guy on the stand was propels full water mist jet at around 4,000 litres a minute, with an effective discharge distance of up to 80 meters. So you don't need a long explanation to understand kind of what that means. It's a suppression piece of equipment. It suppresses fires in vast spaces like factories, warehouses. Traditional internal firefighting can be slow, dangerous, very, very resource heavy, or simply just not viable in the early stages. These are built-in pieces of equipment. They have the ability to project water mist really, really far. And that level of volume and control feels like a massive industrial answer to an industrial problem. And when I think about the amount of large warehouses that are popping up with the Amazon stores and everything else, everything's moving online, and standing there watching it in operation, it's not hard to feel your thinking shift about we're not just committing more and more crews or pushing harder and harder and harder. It forces you to rethink strategies and to ask things about fire behavior, access, suppression change, and where you can influence the environment at a scale before crews are ever exposed to it. Now, obviously, I'm a knuckle dragger. I want to get in there and do the thing. But this sort of innovation and seeing that, start to be installed in factories across the world, or not just factories, but warehouses and stuff like that, really gets you thinking just about the scale of safety that's going into these things. It's not just sprinkler systems anymore. Visually, it looks honestly less like a firefighting equipment and more like something that's just been borrowed off an aircraft carrier or like a wind tunnel. You feel how it would absolutely dominate a fire environment just by probably standing in front of it, to be honest. And I say it's just a really reframed suppression as an engineering problem than more like just a crewing one. And that kind of shift of thinking is all about what these shows are about, away from default to lots and lots of people as a primary solution towards reshaping the environment itself. And that's kind of what Intersec seems to be about at its absolute best. If you want to go and find out a bit more information about that one, there is no paid association with these. They ain't paying us to read this or any rubbish like that. But it's just an interesting one, again, to get your mind out of stuff. This is for people that are running these buildings, but also for people in the first responder sector, firefighters that might want to understand something like this when they come across it. It's the MX1 firefighting turbine. You can find it at minimax.com. And seeing that thing in person, there's a video on there. They've got a YouTube one. Just like seeing that's pretty incredible. So from there, the next thing I remember to write down was some time I spent at AAAG. So AAAG, I can't actually remember what it stands for, but they manufacture a wide range of firefighting branches, nozzles designed for industrial and municipal use. Foam branches, hand-controlled, London pattern-style branches, shorter branch pipes. They've got loads of stuff. So popped onto theirs, and immediately stood out was the just sheer breadth of what they produce. It wasn't a stand really built around like one headline product, which you sometimes see. They've got one big thing on the front. This was like a beautiful buffet. It was a real reminder that some of the most important decisions we make on the fireground happen obviously at the end of the hose. What branch are we choosing? The flow rates, the pressure, the intent. All unglamorous, really, until they're not. Because you've got to spend time on this detail. There's a strong focus around flow control, which is something we kind of reference in the UK, but we don't have as full understanding embedded in a lot of our services. And that's where the conversation really got interesting. So obviously there's constant flow branches that have their place, simplicity, predictability, fewer variables. But then I got looking at things like their Selector Max. Selectable flow nozzles, familiar to a lot of us in the UK, that allow firefighters to deliberately set the flow rates, assuming you're also using a flow meter or you have a consistent pressure that you're actually putting into that line as is prescribed by the branch. Because I think you find a lot of the times people will default to 4 or 5 bar, something like that, when they're feeding a branch, because that's the safe thing to do, that we believe. Well, you try and give someone 8 bar on a handheld branch, they might throw them off. But a lot of these branches will have a optimum branch setting of perhaps 7 or something like that. And that's where pressure and flow have that relationship. And if you're achieving the pressures that it requires, then instead of just guessing or compensating on the fly or defaulting to a habit, you should actually be making that conscious decision about the flow. What's available at the truck? What is the hydrant producing? What is the heat capacity or whatever of this fire that I'm trying to put out? And what is the desirable flow that I'm looking for, especially in constrained or variable supply environments? Those sorts of things should change your behavior. Hopefully it forces a moment of intent when you're using a branch like this. What do we have available? What do we need? What are we trying to achieve? Hopefully it should nudge firefighters away from instinct alone and back towards informed decision making. And that's what I started to think more and more about when you really do see the breadth of branches that are available to people when they're out doing procurement and buying these things. You might only have 2 or 3 variations on your truck, but there's a massive amount. So without overcomplicating things, I just sort of stood there feeling that quiet challenge of some of my long-held assumptions of the branches that I have been familiar with using. So we talked a lot about understanding water and understanding these tools and what they look like in practice. You can go and find AAAG. They've got this AAAGindia.in is their website, and they've got their own YouTube page. Really, really interesting to look at the difference between what the branches do, the settings on them. The YouTube videos have been doing quite well. They're obviously very markety, but go and have a look. AAAG. Not as big in the UK, you don't see much of them.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
Next, we went to NAFCO. But NAFCO was genuinely like a jaw-dropping stage, to be honest with you. They have their headquarters in Dubai. They're among the world's leading producers and suppliers of loads and loads of different things. Top-tier firefighting equipment, fire protection systems, fire alarms, security and safety engineering systems. Aligned with the vision of hopefully obviously being the number one provider for these innovative solutions. And I had a look firstly at their RIV series, which is a rapid intervention vehicle. Honestly, just stops you in your tracks. 6.7 litre urban firefighting truck, feels unapologetically future facing. It was just a beast, to be honest with you. The standout features of it as well, it had a massive drone system mounted on the top of the vehicle. And it's important to say this clearly, that it really wasn't a gimmick that sometimes people think of with drones. It wasn't like a concept mock-up, just designed to grab attention, like let's bolt this on. It was a functional operational drone capable of delivering a massive amount of firefighting resources. So this thing will do water and foam up to 150 meters above the appliance itself. And again, like you think about how this really reframes vertical firefighting, because this thing was massive as well. Easily hold the hose and the weight involved in it. So think, high-rise incidents, inaccessible facades, fires where early intervention matters, but committing crews is really high risk. I suddenly have the ability to influence the fire environment before anyone's even exposed to it. And obviously this is an RIV, so you see the wheels on the damn thing. Like this thing could get committed anywhere. You see them selling these various places across the world, not necessarily, just inside city firefighting, because you wouldn't necessarily think of it for city firefighting. But the roof-mounted turrets it has on it as well. So it's got 2 of them. So it's no longer just an engine. It becomes like a mobile suppression platform. It's obviously great for wildfires and stuff like that. It's 4x4 and the power of the vehicle. You can just see that thing being deployed anywhere. Sort of thing I wanted it myself. That was the thing I saw at the show. And there'll be a picture on the social somewhere, or we'll put a YouTube video and you can ever see me. I did like a show tour. You can see me walking around talking about this vehicle. That was the one I wanted to take home. It's not just technology, looking for a problem. It's a response to really real challenges faced in like dense urban environments, but also outside in the rural. Honestly, this was like the end of the world firefighting vehicle. Also had 2 BA sets on it, obviously with mounted hoses and stuff like that. And it was just a beast. I really can't say much more about it than that. And it probably looked too sexy for some people to think about buying them in certain countries, but it does force you to rethink what an appliance should be as the environments we project continue to change, probably faster than our doctrine does. And that's what Intersec kind of kept doing, stand by stand, gently and persistently pushing that same idea. Not asking firefighters to just work harder with the same tools, but asking whether the tools themselves need to evolve to match the scale and complexity of the risks that we're now facing. So if you want to go and find out a bit more information about the RIV, then you can go to NAFCO, spelled November Alpha Foxtrot Charlie Oscar.com. And you can click on their NF RIV, Rapid Intervention Vehicle, and just take a look at it if you want to. The beast of the damn thing is just beautiful. Fast attack hose reels on it, ultra high pressure systems. It's got a foam system on it, like we said, roller shut doors on the sides. And then make sure you get the model that's got the drone on top. It's still got a tank capacity of 1,700 litres, by the way. So anyone that was thinking that, it's going to have a rubbish pump on the back of it, it doesn't carry much water, 1,700 litres. And its pumping capacity is 2,000 litres a minute at 10 bar. It is nearly 9 tonne. So it's a heavy boy, but he's beautiful. Continuing on from the drone conversation, just for a second, I spent some time speaking with Scal. I think I'm saying his name right. He represents a company called Flightbase, and he's going to be coming on for an episode in the future because he's a really interesting bloke. They enterprise physical AI platform for drone autonomy. So AI-driven intelligence, they redefine how large industrial sites operate, how first responders operate, 24/7 autonomous drone and robotic operations, security, fire, emergency response, site management, inspections. These things were epic, and he did some in-person demonstrations on it. It was one of those conversations that really recalibrated how you think about the whole area of capability. I know we've been speaking about drones a lot in the UK fire and rescue. We haven't spoken about it much on the podcast, to be fair, but there are these conversations happening around how we're building these things that go far beyond just flying cameras or situational awareness toys. These are about deploying drone technology as part of an entire system, monitoring, following, tracking fires, tracking vehicles, tracking people, live incidents in real time. Platforms designed to integrate directly into command structures rather than sit like awkwardly outside of them as like a nice Gucci feature. They were positioned on the DJI stand. You'll know who DJI are. They like basically the global leaders in drones. Certainly this is the biggest, I think is the biggest one people know about in the UK. Makes complete sense. Hardware already widely adopted across emergency services globally. Most people are familiar with their frames, and what Flightbase do is focused on what comes next. Automation, overwatch, intelligent tasking, drones that don't just fly when someone remembers to launch them. They actually deploy as part of the response. So like you would tip the incident out on the pin on the map, and this thing just launch itself and off it goes. So it's not about adding another task for someone to already remember on an overloaded incident commander or control system. About systems that work in the background, and they've got sites all over the world. They've even got sites in the UK already, and these things can launch automatically and feed live data into command. Instead of it being a nice to have, it becomes part of the architecture of the response, predictable, reliable, and embedded in what we do. So it really removes a lot of those human bottlenecks, not removing humans for not taking them away from the decision-making loop, but removing them from delays that come from availability, memory, over capacity, workload. And they live in docking stations and they deploy when certain triggers are met. So you can follow it on a PDA or a predefined protocol and have that information cleanly in the command system. And it really felt like a step change rather than just like an upgrade. As I said, they're already booked in for a podcast. So we're going to dig into it properly because I think it deserves its own space, not just in the context of fire, but obviously policing, search and rescue, wider emergency response, how technology can compress time and reduce exposure and give decision makers better information earlier, which is ideally when it matters the most. You can find out more about them at www.flightbase. So that's fly with a T on the end. So Foxtrot Lima Yankee Tango base, Bravo Alpha Sierra Echo.com. None of these are paid promotion, guys. They're just stuff that stood out to me. So have a look if you think it's interesting. Next up, as I was continuing to walk the floor, I stumbled across my old friend Joe from D-Wipe. To give her a full title, there's obviously Joe Taylor from D-Wipe, MBE. D-Wipe are already very widely known in the UK, the world's leading supplier of decontamination products from UK to UK fire and rescue, reducing occupational cancer in our workforce. And I wanted to give them a proper little shout out because it deserves that little pause, because it's not just another wipe on a stand, and it becomes obvious very quickly if you know anything about them or if you start talking to them. Their entire mission is built around reducing the risk of occupational cancer for first responders and other high-risk workers, tackling something that we have historically been very, very poor at addressing. And also, it's the sort of thing, if you don't do it right, it stays with you way after the job is done. We spend a lot of time, especially even on the podcast, talking about heat, flame, collapse, immediate injuries, and we spend far less time talking about the invisible stuff that clings to the skin, the gear, the PPE after exposure. D-Wipe's focused on removing those bits, the harmful, the carcinogenic toxins that are generated by combustion, and they follow us back on the appliance, back to the station, and sometimes all the way home if we're not doing what we should be doing right. They're scientifically proven products to eliminate pollutants and carcinogens that regular wipes just can't touch. Things like dioxins and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, those sorts of crazy names. They're not just abstract chemicals, they are known byproducts of the fires that we attend. And again, if you just speak to Joe, what really stands out is the seriousness in which they approach that problem. It's not just framed as like a niche product or a nice to have. It's positioned in itself as a necessary addition, essential to health and safety practice. Not just for fire, but obviously across policing, aviation, oil and gas, and any sector where exposure to toxic combustion products is routine and repeated. There's a quiet confidence in how they spoke about international growth, the education they're doing, the behavior change. They are shifting norms, not just selling stuff. So seeing that level of purpose and just seeing them, just seeing Joe and the team at Intersec, it was just really fitting. It was really lovely, and I was incredibly proud, in the least condescending manner, just to see great UK companies and great UK human beings out there on a global scale. Because for all the talk of innovation, automation, future technology, industry doesn't just need shiny new things, even though I've just spoken about some lovely shiny new trucks. We don't just need more drones and the next generation of them. We need to protect the people who actually walk into the danger in the first place. We need to give ourselves the tools that matter, not just in the immediate incident, but across the course of our career. And standing there, it was a lovely reminder that some of the most meaningful progress in our profession is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's about quietly reducing risk over years rather than just seconds. And that, in its own way, might be one of the most important innovations on the floor, to be honest with you. That evening, end of day one, day took a really unexpected but meaningful turn. It was a real privilege when I bumped into a friend of mine, Michael Dayson. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I made all these notes and I've got Michael on my phone, but I got invited to the British Embassy out in Dubai. Michael, I hope you didn't mind me mentioning anyway, he's the principal fire and security advisor for the UK Defence and Security Exports for the Department of Business and Trade. I hope I've got that right. Sorry if I've got your title wrong, Michael. But Really lovely bloke. He's got a background in fire as well. And he actually had a lot of work with the Exit Project and stuff like that, working with Professor Tim Nutbeam. So the guy is a real lover of the detail and very passionate about the fire service. And the invitation was a real privilege. And it kind of like, you sometimes walk in dreams like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing here? It was a real shift for me. We're moving away from the show floor, the machinery of response, and into the quieter but extraordinarily influential world of policy diplomacy and international business and collaboration. Loads of different levers, different skills required, same objective, keeping people safe at scale, basically. It was really nice, fitting end of the day, and one that, again, encouraged me to think bigger and bigger and bigger. Seeing how the UK positions itself globally in fire and security innovation was absolutely eye-opening. Like, I hadn't realised the amount of incredible players, because you get stuck in your own silo. And not in a boastful sense, but the UK is stepping out there a bit more quietly and a bit more confidently now, because industry, government, international partners all sit in the same room. You begin to understand how influence actually works, not through noise and brash action, but credibility, consistency, willingness to show up properly. It reinforced a belief I or have already held, which I think, obviously I'd say this, the UK, I think, has a crucial role to play internationally in fire and emergency services and just collaboration and global response. But only if we are prepared to step up, not waiting to be invited. Do you know what I mean? If we're bold enough, we're confident, if we have a bit of self-belief, stepping into these environments rather than watching them from the sidelines. And the British Embassy in Dubai was supporting the UK companies that were doing that and inviting them together to really just celebrate each other. The embassy itself is home to Sarah Mooney. She's lovely, from the Department of Business and Trade. She welcomed me into the embassy garden, had a lovely conversation with her, and just like, what an incredibly high emotional intelligence. Time just sort of slowed down. No agenda being pushed, no elevator pitches, just an honest exchange between people. She was lovely. I didn't even know who she was to start with until the speaker that stepped on stage to sort of introduce the evening pointed her out as a sort of thank you for inviting us into essentially what is her home. Incredibly interesting woman, very warm, genuinely hospitable in a way that made the whole evening just feel really lovely and grounded rather than anything super formal. So I bumped into my good friend Matt from Jafco. He was there as well. What a lovely bloke. I tell you what, I could spend hours with him. We had a laugh, we had a giggle, we had some nice food. He was very kind to introduce you to various people, and just sitting there surrounded by the lovely greenery of the embassy was quite like surreal, because you're in the middle of a city built on speed and scale and ambition. And it struck me how much of the world still runs on human connection. Not policy documents or strategy slides or your 10-pitch deck or whatever it is. Conversations, trust, curiosity. That reminder that behind every massive, massive export deal, every safety standard, every international partnership, there's actually people who care deeply about getting it right, and the knowledge in that room, in the garden, in the space of the evening, blew me away.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighter podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. But here's the honest truth. It takes a colossal amount of time and work to keep the podcast going. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. Now, if you've ever wanted to meet a member of the podcast, buy us a beer, buy us a coffee, and you think anything you've ever listened to on the podcast has been worth £3, that's basically what we're asking you for. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
I tried to write down notes, but I'm probably going to get them wrong. I'll put them out there anyway. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. I think 2025, UK, United Arab Emirates trade relationship has grown and grown and grown. I think they said something like, and I apologize if I get it wrong, UK exports of goods and services to the UAE had reached something like 16 billion. Might be more than that. Might have been 70. Might have been 90. I can't remember, but it was in the teens. It was big. It's up like 13, 14% from the previous year. That number's astonishing. Not just the scale, but in what it represents. The strengthening ties, the shared challenges, the opportunities, and the interest for people to see UK on the map out there, still being part of the conversations. Those numbers, which I've probably got wrong, but they're not far off. You can Google something similar as well, because I made notes and then I tried to fact check. They kind of help explain why gatherings like Intersec and diplomatic outreach through the Department of Business and Trade really, really matter. Part of a massive connective tissue. The unseen framework that helps UK businesses, technologies, and innovations find partners, markets, and real-world impact far beyond home shores, like global impact. And for the fire and emergency sector, that really matters, because when you go out there, you have those relationships, you bring back so much as well. When we step into these spaces with confidence and humility, we don't just export products, we export experience, learning, a way of thinking about safety and response. That's been earned the hard way. We're good at this. We are good at this in the UK. And it felt like a reminder of both the privilege of being there, but also the responsibility of getting invited into rooms like that. If you want the UK, and if the UK itself wants to shape the future of response, security, safety, global fire, we can't do it by standing at home, staying comfortable. We have to show up. We have to listen. We have to contribute. We have to be willing to lead when it counts in these spaces. So that was day one. We then went out even after that, as when it gets late, and we went into the city again. They hired out a restaurant or something like that. It was lovely. Met my good friend, Sarah Adamson. It's her birthday out there. She was 30 again. Can you believe it? Hey, Sarah, if you're listening, 30th birthday again. She's lovely. She's done a lot of work with the podcast, helping us out over the years. She invited me to some lovely drinks. I met some more incredible people. Olivia and Barnaby joined us there. Just great way to finish the day. But man, were we tired. I forgot actually. When we were doing our chill out day the day before, we went out on this massive yacht. Had some lovely food, and we saw like a 1,000-piece drone display. Just a random segue. Sorry, I forgot to put that in earlier. But you see 1,000 drones. Maybe it wasn't 1,000. They said it was 1,000. I mean, who's counting these things? There's a lot. If you've never seen one of those shows, YouTube it. Drone shows in the sky. Ridiculous. Just stumbled across it in the harbour. And we're like, oh my God, the amount you paid to see something like that. The display of everything in Dubai was amazing. But that was the end of day one. Didn't get back to 2 a.m. And then we're rolling into day two. 6 a.m. Bang, up, cold shower. Yes, I'm one of those guys. Into the gym, smashed it up. Barnaby joined me, got after it, felt good, felt ready, dressed to impress. First tactical, geared us out once again. Their stuff is just amazing. We had the boots, trousers, had on the long sleeve, sweat wicking tops, pockets for the pens on the sleeves. I wasn't having to lumber a massive bag around with me because their kit, their clothing is just built for the right environments, and it ain't crazy expensive. This is obviously a relationship we have with them, and you're not going to have any host reads in this episode, but we did this partnership with First Tactical because this is the stuff every first responder in the UK needs to be wearing. Full stop, no questions asked. I'm not going to bore you with the details of the products, but the clothing. And I've worn just about most uniforms that are available in the fire and rescue service because I obviously quite literally am the badge collector if you've seen the hoodie. I love going around and trying everything because then it gives you a better understanding of what good looks like. And the First Tactical gear is good. So day two. Let's get in to day two. Again, I've been waffling for a little bit now. We're going to touch some bits of day two. And then we will try and get some interesting bits in about what we saw, what we did. So let's roll into that. So again, I'm going to fail to talk about everything because the disciplines that you put in on day one start to slip on day two when the brain fog hits hard and you're still just main veining the social battery with cognitive horsepower and caffeine to keep going, because after about 4 hours sleep, we rolled into day 2, back at Intersec. Energy was a little bit different, a little bit less wide-eyed, more deliberate. Wanted to make sure we spent our time and limited energy in the right places. First day was a lot of curiosity, looked around a lot of the floor. So we settled into something more focused. It was about joining the dots rather than just collecting impressions. In the morning, I was kind enough again to have a catch up with Michael. As he said, my good friend Phil Garrigan from the National Fire Chiefs Council was in Dubai on site. And he was there with Richard Abbott, who is the head of Service and Operational Training, West Sussex. Hope I've got that right, Richard. Yeah, I have. I've just checked it. Head of Operational Training. Lovely bloke. Very knowledgeable. Very knowledgeable. Like, we got talking all about quadrant methods and, offensive exterior firefighting and rewriting of, not rewriting, but like the next steps of national operational guidance, stuff like that. And Phil was there as well, obviously. Number of decades in Merseyside. Close friend of the podcast. Close friend Dan Stevens as well. Another good friend of the podcast. Just a really enthusiastic firefighter who eventually just became a chief and then chair of the National Fire Chiefs Council. So they were out there with some clear purpose, not posturing, not selling anything, of course, but representing the UK fire sector honestly. Share what we're doing really well. And just as importantly, they were learning from international best practice and without any kind of ego or defensiveness. And I love the way that Phil goes about those sorts of things. Real curiosity, obviously very high emotional intelligence, and he's got a great balance. Because credibility of the UK Fire and Rescue on a global scale doesn't just come from pretending you have it all figured out and relying on our history. It comes from being confident enough to listen, to lean in, to learn best practice, to demonstrate best practice, and to be part of best practice globally. So I spent time talking with them about some of the genuine success stories in UK fire, not like slogans or headlines or anything like that, but the advancements that we've made in policy, governance, training, nationally recognised best practices I've spoken about. It's taken years of hard work to land, and there's next levels of that coming in. Some of the stuff that I won't share here, that Phil, Rich, and the wider team are working on, is really exciting. It actually is exciting, honestly. I know sometimes we can get change fatigue in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and we think people are just rebranding and renaming and coming up with silly acronyms for the same thing. But actually, some of the stuff Phil, Rich, Dan, the wider team are looking at, I'm going to put myself out there and say it. I think it's really going to move things forward in a fantastic way. I'm not going to say much more than that because I'll probably get in trouble. But stuff's moving and I'm optimistic about it. Not just because we're the UK, not just because we're British, but because we're there to stand on our own merit. We have incredible people in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, like people I'm privileged to speak to. They are consummate professionals with just a finger on the pulse of knowledge, innovation, experience, curiosity, intellectual capability, and a lot of operational credibility. So what struck me was the shared understanding that we were bringing around moving and staying at pace with global innovation. Got some good leadership up there. And they really demonstrated that there isn't many elements up there around the modern fire service pretending that leadership has all the answers. If anything, it felt like the opposite. Leadership now is about building systems that can adapt, creating frameworks that evolve and move forward as the risks change, as technology advances, and as society's expectations shift around what first responders do, what the fire service does. And that's something I'm seeing more and more in conversations with leaders across the UK Fire and Rescue Service, that kind of quiet move away from certainty and more towards staying curious, eternal student, moving forwards, not resting on our laurels. There's a lot more to unpack from those conversations, and they deserve their own space rather than just being rushed through here, which probably sounds like I've done. But just standing there day 2, it felt really like a reminder of progress in the sector. And then it doesn't necessarily happen, obviously, in public spaces. It happens quietly through these intentional conversations and relationships and the willingness to look beyond our own borders and accept that good ideas don't care where they come from. We are embracing them, we're moving forward with them. And Intersec, again, and the Blue Light Show, by their very nature, create those collisions, create those environments. And UK fire leadership is in those conversations with their global peers, with the global leaders, not comparing badges, but comparing thinking. And that, in many ways, is one of the most valuable outcomes for me of the entire trip. I got a massive amount of confidence in what we're doing and where we're heading with that. Where am I at now? I'm an hour in. Right. We're going to do a couple more. And again, as I said, I'm not going to be able to cover all this stuff. So I'm going to try and wrap it up soon because it's nearly midnight and I'm on shift in the morning. So let's do a couple more. One thing I do want to make sure I put in is catching up with a really good friend of mine, Johnny Garrett, William Wood Watches. What a lovely man. And it was great to see him out there because it stuck with me in a space that was predominantly dominated by technology, systems, and future capability. Johnny's all about culture, identity, and the meaning that still matters deeply in our profession. Now, you'll know William Wood Watches from many years ago. They used to work with the podcast. We obviously a massive fan of their watches. I've had them on my wrist for, I don't know, 10 years, something like that. And they've got a genuine connection with the firefighter community, obviously with the challenge world as well. And you feel that straight away when you talk to Johnny, the knowledge he has about the UK Fire and Rescue Service, the passion that he has for his family, his grandfather, which was the whole origin of the brand itself. They're not just watches, they are like markers. They show up at moments that really matter when things happen in your section with promotions, retirements, birthdays, passing out of training, those sorts of things, moments of remembrance, like 9/11, line of duty anniversaries, dates that really carry weight. These are really, really meaningful gifts. He had some beautiful pieces out there with him, and they're designed to hold that story. They use, obviously, reclaimed fire service materials. You're probably familiar with William Wood Watches, but go and take a look at them again, williamwoodwatches.com, to celebrate your new year. There's something that really mean a lot to someone if you get it as a gift. It's not really just about the watch. It's about the recognition, whether it's recognizing the time people have given to the sector, the risk they've carried, the commitment they've shown. He had some amazing pieces out there with him, brand new designs. The innovation and ideas just pour out of this man. They're beautiful pieces, and obviously they stay on the wrist long after the job finishes, the noise fade. They're there through family milestones. And to be completely open about it, I say all of this as someone who owns 3 of them. I genuinely love them. Each one marks a different chapter of life for me, different reasons, different moments. And when I put them on, it's never accidental. There's always a story and a meaning attached to why I wear my watches. Because in a job, without getting too woo-woo, where time is something we kind of borrow, spend, sometimes lose track of altogether, having something on your wrist that understands what the job is, what it means to us, feels really fitting. An exciting thing, they are going to be coming back on board with the podcast again very soon. And not ready yet, but there'll be a discount code available for listeners. So it's not live yet. When it is, I'll share it clearly and properly. For now, just keep your eyes peeled. And as always, anything I talk about here is something I actually use, I value, I believe in, and that matters to me. And I really do think you'll love them. If you're probably already aware of what they are anyway, but they are going from strength to strength. Johnny and the team are just smashing through international barriers. And the benefit of that is it makes them more affordable for everybody. So we're way into some time for what has been pretty much a solo episode. Total honesty, we didn't stay for day 3. It's not because the well had run dry. If anything, it felt like the opposite. There was still loads amount left to take in, loads more conversations waiting, lots more innovation tucked away just behind the next aisle in the next hall, more ideas sitting on stands that we just never quite reached. Intersec is vast. You don't conquer it in 2 days. You sample it, and even then, you don't get the full juice out of the tube. Reality has a habit of calling you back. Day 3 meant a hard stop for me. Rushed journey back to UK soil, straight back into operational life. I've been back, what is it now? I've been back a week already, and this is the first time I've had time to sit down and start going through some of this. I was back in operational life. I was actually back on station on watch the next day, so that was a rough one. But the rhythm of the job means that's what we come back for. That's what we do. Trucks don't stop rolling out just because we go somewhere extraordinary, having a massive adventure. So it was a little bit of a jarring shift back, but also fitting. Intersec is also about all about future thinking. Fire service, however, lives in the present, sometimes in the past, depends where you're based, and that tension sits at the heart of kind of everything we do. I left knowing there was way more that we could have absorbed, more we could have unpacked, more we could have questioned, but I also left knowing that the real work happens away from the show floor, happens afterwards. It's about how do we take what we see, what we heard, what we felt, and how do we apply it where it matters? How do we push these things forwards in our country, in our region, in our service, in our station, in our watch, in ourselves? How do we enact on those things in the training yards, in the conversations when we're talking about policy, in procurement when we're picking kit, in leadership decisions? How do we prepare people for risks that are already changing faster than most of us are comfortable admitting? My curiosity personally has always been fueled by the need to get hands-on. I am a kinesthetic person. I like to monkey see, monkey do, monkey touch. I like to be there to see it, to touch it, to ask questions you only think of when you're probably standing in front of the people building the future rather than reading or hearing about it. That instinct is what keeps me coming back to this microphone to speak to people all around the world. And it pulls the Firefighters podcast into these spaces, not to report from a distance, but to try and be part of those conversations while it's still being formed. So over this next few months, we're going out to Italy, going out to Australia. Australia's going to be a good one. International Fire Instructors Workshop. That's coming up soon. Going to do some episodes around that. Then we've got Intersec in Germany. And then we've got the Blue Light Show landing in London in July. None of that exists in isolation. It's all one big, beautiful soup of conversation, every single conversation, every product, every lesson learned, observed, things I see internationally, is something I'm deliberately trying to roll into the execution of the podcast and as part of the Blue Light Show on UK soil. Not as a copy of what works elsewhere, but hopefully as a sharper, more informed platform that is built on first-hand experience rather than borrowed insights. So if this episode feels like I've talked a lot and not really covered everything, even though I've talked a lot, that's the truth of Intersec. It's too big, too layered. It's not too big, but it's too fast moving to ever fully capture in one visit or one conversation. But what I hope it does do is offer a glimpse, a sense of direction, a bit of a whisper of where to go, and maybe a few questions worth sitting with yourself if you've listened to this all the way up to this point, and if maybe you can listen back, because I know I speak a bit quickly. Progress in our profession does not come from having all the answers. It comes from being curious enough to keep asking better questions. So go and find these spaces, have these conversations, because those things, more than anything, is what Intersec reinforced for me. Thanks for sticking with me as far as we've come. Hopefully you're going to be with us for a long time to come. I really appreciate you. Yes, you listening to this. I appreciate you hanging right into the end. Hopefully it's been useful. We are changing gears. We are stepping up, and I hope you're doing the same. I'll see you next time.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, live with intention, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.